let's go back to Jeff for a second. As you recall, we spent some time with Jeff. We did a preliminary evaluation. His range was 100 to 150 million, right? Fair market value to the top end of the strategic value range, 100 to 150. So Jeff takes a look at this. We spent a lot of time thinking about how we can create value in the business. He goes back for a few years, does a few small acquisitions, decreases risk, increases cash flow, does all sorts of stuff to the business, comes back, and man, he killed it. His range is now moved up. It's 150 to 200 as opposed to 1 to 150. He says, you know what, Paul? It's time to pull the trigger. Well, inevitably, what I would say to Jeff is, that's great. Here's what I want you to do, Jeff. Take your mind off the business for a second and think about who the acquirers are for this business. Who would be the most likely buyers? Who has reached out to you over the years? Oh, Paul, I get 50, 60 emails a year. So okay, let's pull all this stuff together. We'll compile it and we'll take a look. But I really want you to think about who the best acquirer. You've been in this business for longer than I have. Who do you think would be the right buyers? Okay, fine. So Jeff comes back with a list. He's got a huge list, but he says, Paul, I think these 6 companies are the most likely buyers for this business. In fact, I think A and B here could create the most value by doing this deal. So Jeff is thinking about synergies that could be created. How can an acquirer cut some cost? How can they do revenue enhancements? How could they utilize some of this technology? All the different things. How might this acquisition be defensive to them? In a lot of ways, the Starbelly acquisition was defensive for Halo. They were concerned that this innovative, disruptive business was going to eat up the market. So by buying them, it was a defensive move, which is always great if you're a seller, if an acquirer is on the run and is defensive. So he says, Paul, acquire A and B. They're both publicly traded. I think that they can create the most value by doing this deal. They can cut the most costs. They can utilize my technology. They can get some revenue enhancements by cross-selling to my customers and their customers, so on and so forth. Great. So then we start to talk about the sell-side process. And we say, okay, we're going to take these 6 buyers here. We've got some here. You've got some other tangential ones. We're going to add them to the list. We're going to go out to 42 potential buyers with the sell-side materials. And inevitably, the Jeffs of the world will sit back and say, well, Paul, sure, we can do all this work. We can go out to 40 different companies, but I think these 2 acquirers could create the most value, and I think acquirer A really is the one that they've contacted us, they want it, I know they can create a lot of value. Why wouldn't we just go to acquirer A and see if they'll pay us $200 million? And while I think that makes a lot of logical sense, there's a couple of problems with it. Number one, we can never know the stories that the buyers are telling themselves, right? We know the stories we want them to tell, but we never really understand what's going on behind the scenes. And I'm going to give you an example of that. It's a real life example that I dealt with in 2019. I had a client who said the exact same thing. So Paul, let's just go to publicly traded acquirer A. There were 2 other publicly traded acquirers in the market. Said, I don't really care for these guys, and quite frankly, I don't see them creating as much value. And I said, well, that's great, but we never know what's going on behind the scenes, and I think we should run a full process, which we inevitably did. And it wasn't acquire A and it wasn't acquire B. It was acquire C that came out and put an astronomical number on the table. We closed the deal with them. And what we determined later, we realized that that company was having some financial issues and wanted to plug a hole in its P&L. So wanted to go out and do a massive acquisition. It was publicly traded. It was getting towards the end of the quarter. They wanted to get it done. There was intense pressure to get the deal done. But they had some things going on behind the scenes that we didn't understand, didn't know about with regard to their upcoming year financial results, which caused them to do something they otherwise wouldn't have done. Now, there's no way we could have known that, but had we just gone to acquire A and acquire B in that particular case, we would have left tens of millions of dollars on the table, right? So we never really know what goes on behind the scenes. We don't know what's particularly defensive for an acquisition. We don't know how long an executive intends to stay around. Maybe an executive's thinking about retiring. The CEO is like, you know what? I'm retiring next year and I want to get a slam dunk deal done. I've been very successful at deals over the years. Like, I'm going to do a big one now, or I'm going to do a series of small ones that are going to work out well for us. We never really understand true motivations behind the scenes, so we always want to get full price discovery and talk to all the likely suspects. We never, ever want to assume. Now, on the sell side, we can craft a narrative and we can hope they'll buy it. Sophisticated buyers will listen to what we have to say and then discount it accordingly. But we never will know the stories that they're telling themselves. We never know the CEO who's telling himself he has to do a deal. Or the CFO is telling the CEO, you know what, we better do this deal because if we don't get this, our numbers are not going to look right and our stock's going to crater next year. The other issue with just going to the one buyer is that if you're not running a full competitive process, more times than not always, but more times than not, you're not putting an acquirer in a position to lose. Remember, the sell side process is the battle between fair market value and strategic value. The acquirer is actually creating the value on a deal. Let's take the example of a transaction I recently saw in Asia. In India and Southeast Asia, there's a lot of call centers, right, that service Australia, the United States, South Africa, the UK. You got English-speaking folks in the Philippines, for example, that answer the phone. Hello, thank you for calling Chase Bank. These jobs are being replaced by computers. I mean, just get on ChatGPT on your phone, right? You can conjure any sort of voice. You can have a chat with it. It actually sounds like you talk to a person. So companies that actually have that technology will not need all these people. And so an acquirer that had a tremendous amount of AI technology with regard to voice recognition and contact center management looks at a call center that's been doing the same thing since 1982. 5,000 people in this big building answering the phone. The acquirer doesn't need all those people. What it needs is the customers, so it can make the acquisition of this company, get rid of thousands of people answering the phone and let a computer do it all night long for just the price of electricity. In that particular case, it's the acquirer that owns the technology. They're buying the target. They're getting rid of the cost. The acquirer is creating the value there. So it's the battle between fair market value and investment value. And so why would this acquirer pay a full investment value unless somebody else was there waiting in the wings to pick it up for a price similar to what they would ultimately have to pay for it? You need that competitive pressure in a process. And so that's why I always talk about, you got to get full price discovery and you got to do it through an iterative process. And I won't spend a lot of time talking about that today, but I did talk about it in the sell side M&A masterclass, as well as the psychology behind an M&A transaction. What I hear most often from our clients here at Potomac is the extreme value in working with us years in advance of a sale. Not only do we help establish a fair market value in a range of investment values for the client, but we provide them a roadmap of everything they could possibly do in order to increase value and decrease risk in anticipation of a future sale. If you've got a sale on the horizon, whether it be 6 months from now or 5 years from now, we'd love to have a chat with you. Please use the contact form below in the description to reach out to us today. And feel free to share this masterclass series with somebody who you think might benefit from it. Again, I'm Giannamore. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you on the next one.